police officer. Honorable Speaker, if the commission do not have enough money, why do you employ professional Kenyans if you do not have enough money? Because you choose a career. And the reason why we go to school so that you can acquire skills and improve your career. Honorable Speaker, those officers, for example, who are trained, who have degrees, who have decided to join police force, it is not that they are desperate. In police force, we need people who are informed. Because for someone to write a statement for a member of parliament, you need this person to be informed. This person has to have purpose. But how do you underpay this person, Honorable Speaker? How do you underpay this person? So one, for us to ensure that the police officers who are in force are motivated, they offer Kenyans their services the way they want, we must pay them adequate salary. Let them even pay more salary than even of a member of parliament. There is no problem. Because people are fond of reducing the payment of members of parliament. Reduce that one of member of parliament the way you want to your satisfaction. We don't care because for us it's sacrifice. We did not come here because of salary. We came here because of sacrifice, that we want to represent our people. So for policemen, Mr. Speaker, I urge the executive. It's better we leave corruption, those who are involved in corruption. It's better we secure funds and make sure we pay police officers enough salary, we provide them adequate housing, we provide them adequate uniform, we provide them adequate water, we provide them adequate electricity. Because they are human beings. Before they protect other Kenyans, may them be protected, may them be protected, may them be motivated, may them be empowered. Because if we don't empower them, how will they actually suffer these other Kenyans? These are the people we call in philosophy artisans. They are implementers of our law. They bring order. If they themselves do not have order, how will they bring order in the nation? Because if you do not have enough salary, you are not in order. If you do not have enough housing, you are not in order. If you do not have enough uniform, you are not in order. How will they bring order in nation if they themselves do not have order? Honorable Speaker, I think it is in order for us to agree as an house, and whether it is an affirmative action, whether it is on humanity, police officers who are serving in hardship areas, even those who are serving in Nairobi, Honorable Speaker, even those ones are very insecure because all the criminals in the world have come to Nairobi. They are hibernating in Nairobi. You will find those who are working even in Nairobi, Honorable Speaker, police, they are working 24 hours. They are insecure 24 hours. That's why we have lost officers, members of parliament just near here, not even 2 kilometers away, Honorable Speaker, just here. It's because we need to provide adequate salary to police officers. So I urge my members of parliament, I urge the executive, for order to be in this nation, let us see the conditions of the police officers, especially those who are working in hardship areas, because they have been losing lives all the time. I support, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. Let's have Honorable Guna, a member for Mwingi West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this motion. Thank you to Honorable Omar Malim for moving this motion. It's very important. I urge the members to support it because I know majority of us here have got police and relatives who are working as policemen. We have visited them in their houses. We have visited them at their homestead, and we've done a lot, and we've seen the conditions. Let me say that I'm supporting this motion, and we are not only requesting for housing alone. We all know the salaries which we've just seen recently. Imagine a policeman earning a gross salary of 47,000 shillings. So I think it's a peanut compared to the living conditions our policemen are actually experiencing. We are not only supporting the salaries. I know in President's big agenda, the 4 agendas, he talked of housing, and housing being one of the 4 agendas. I think our president and also the government need to incorporate housing for policemen in that perspective. I know majority of policemen, we also need to improve their working conditions. I've visited so many police stations. I've visited their working areas, and I can tell you some of them even don't have access to lighting, even in antiquated lighting and electricity. For them even to protect us. And I would like the House actually to request the government to ensure that even where there are police cabs and police stations, we have got electricity for them to offer the services. We all know that they're also experiencing a lot of immobile policemen, actually police force, actually cannot enforce the law and order. So we also need a lot of vehicles for these gentlemen. I know we vilified them many times. We have vilified them many times, but still they are doing a lot of corruption because of the meager, the peanuts they are earning. So in this time, I support this motion, Honorable Speaker, and thank you very much for giving me this time.
Yes, very well. The Deputy Majority Leader, you look quite...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance.
Order, Deputy Majority. Are you saying you actually spoke to this motion?
I've not spoken yet, no.
You spoke on amendment. Yeah, so if that's fine. If you spoke on the amendment, not on this substantive motion, then you have the floor.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Speaker, giving me a chance to contribute this important motion. Mr. Speaker, among public servants in this country who are very poorly paid and maintained are the policemen and the women. Mr. Speaker, I had a chance to visit a relative of mine who lives in some tent in Upper, near the bus stop, the country bus stop. And I found that he was staying with his wife in that house, one room tent, with another officer also who has got a wife. So they live there. 2 policemen live with their family, with their wives, in the same room. So sometimes it means that they may have to compete how they perform. Mr. Speaker, what deplorable situation can you be put? Just imagine, Mr. Speaker, that house, that room where you are staying, and when he's brought there with his wife to stay with you in the same room, will you be an husband? Will she be a wife? And these days, Mr. Speaker, some of those, most of policemen are young people. They're not like Angwenyi. They are young people. When you go away, they might be attracted to the other young person, and therefore mess up homes. Mr. Speaker, the salaries that a policeman gets, 17,000 shillings per month, and the house allowance of 3,000 shillings per month. Where on earth, where in Kenya can you stay in a good accommodation at the 3,000 shillings a month? Where? Where in Nairobi, for example? Where in Mombasa? There's no place like that. You can't get even a bed sitter. Goes for more than 10,000 shillings a month. So it means you apply all your salary and the so-called house allowance to get accommodation for your family. How will you fit them?
Order, Deputy Majority Leader. Honorable Janet, member from Trans Nzoia, you seem to have an intervention. What's the point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I wanted you to catch my eyes.
Order, Honorable Janet.
So, Mr. Speaker,
you can't be caught that way, but you have been caught, but that's not the way to catch the eye of the Speaker. You can't use the intervention button.
Mr. Speaker, this problem is countrywide. I do realize that those people who are sent to hostile areas have got additional problems. But the problem of remuneration and accommodation of members of police service is very poor countrywide. Whether you are in Nairobi, you are in Kisii, you are in Murang'a, you are wherever you are, they are getting a very low deal. And these salaries are remuneration commission. Actually, when they reduced our salaries, I wish they had applied that reduction to the police force, so the police force could be remunerated a little bit better. Really, in current times, with current inflation and current cost of living, a policeman should not earn less than 50,000 shillings a month. And if it's not housed, it should be given not less than 20,000 shillings for housing. Then, and only then, can you now look at their activities. Sometimes when they ask you, Nisaidie na chai, they really mean it. They just don't have it. If you give him 100 shillings, he really feels happy. Because 100 shillings can make a difference in his life for that day. Do we want to subject our people to that kind of condition? People who give their lives to save the lives of Kenyans. People who want to die on your behalf. Mr. Speaker, the police force is the one which maintains peace in the country. And if we subject them to those very dire conditions, would they defend us? We are saying the police force is corrupt. Really? What do you expect when you pay somebody 3,000 shillings for a house, and the house costs more than 10,000 shillings to stay in 1 month? You have to look other ways. He's a human being. Mr. Speaker, this country has developed and is developing quite fast. But for that development agenda to be achieved, we must remunerate and take care of our police force thoroughly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we do have skilled officers who are assigned to most of these members of parliament. You have got to provide for them some of their accommodation, because they can't afford it through their salaries. Mr. Speaker, I do know that areas like Northeastern, like some parts of Baringo, Turkana, Bokot, Mount Elgon, have got special cases. What we should do is we approve this motion, we prepare, the MP prepares a bill for it, and is this a bill? It's a motion. We pass that bill, and we make our implementation committee make sure that that act is implemented to the letter. And then, you know, we have what power to do that. The budget can be brought here. If we see that the budget for police force is not adequate, we just return it to Treasury. Tell him to pick it up fast before they bring it here. And we can, I'm sorry to say that as a deputy leader, but we must take care of our Kenyans, and especially our police workers who take care of the security and the safety of Kenyans. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg support.
Yes, honorable members, we will still get a chance. I will be fair. Both sides of the House, considering the time you came, considering issues of gender, but I will make sure that I'm as fair as it can be and seniority as well, and many other considerations. And those who haven't spoken for a while. Honorable Martin Owino.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very brief because most of the members have alluded to what I was going to say. But as a new member, Mr. Speaker, what worries me most is that most of the motion passed here is not implemented. That's a big worry. Because as we debate here, those who are affected, like in this case, the police force, they are looking into this House help them with their, what they are going through. But also, let me say it is oxymoron to expect police officers to maintain peace when they don't have peace within themselves. They don't have peace where they live. In fact, even their transportation is a mess. Most of the time, they borrow cars from other departments in order to discharge duties. So I tend to agree with Honorable Angwenyi. I wonder, maybe the budget committee can lead us on this. I wonder what percentage in the security package is the police service accrued to? Because that is very important for us. As I know where there's activity on the other armed forces, maybe Al-Shabaab and other areas, but most of the work of security is by the police officers. So we need to look into that. Why is this not implemented? Also, allow me to say, like in my constituency in Dewa, I'm trying as much as I can to use my little CDF to renovate and to build more. If there is no channel for funds to go for these activities, then increase CDF so that we can help. Because when things go wrong in our constituencies, it's the MP, including the police. They look up to MPs to help them. So that would be another avenue. If the other one is a big animal, let us use that channel so that we can help our police officers. But I tend to disagree on the issue of corruption. Anybody who can take 200 shillings illegally can also take 200,000 or 200 million. In fact, poverty is not a license for corruption. There's an old woman, Mr. Speaker, who was very poor, of the poorest, but he donated 2 coins. So as much as their conditions are deplorable, it is also fair to say that we have to get rid of corruption in the police force. And we have to stand up on that as a house to make sure that is done. I would also want to say that for those who are saying hardship, it's not only anchored on harsh weather, insecurity, and all. To me, hardship for the forces we have is enshrined in living standards, equipment. In fact, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, if you go to a police station, even the chairs they sit on, full of cockroaches because they are unmaintained. Their welfare is important to us. I tend to believe that this can go also into education of their children, their proper medical coverage, as well as appropriate insurances. So that especially those who are in risk areas, but all police officers are facing different risks. So we have to look into their insurance as well. Lastly, and I may be yielding my time to Honorable Weri, I don't know whether that works here, but I want to say, let's look into the implementation committee so that this debate today becomes end of all debate for these people and we get it implemented. So I support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Should we have Honorable Florence Mutua, member for Busia?
Can that happen? And I've been here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute to this important motion, and I stand to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, a police officer's first order of business is to serve and protect. Police officers play a very central role in the law enforcement system. They monitor criminal activity, responding to emergency calls when necessary, investigate crimes, and even testify in court as and when necessary. That said, Mr. Speaker, police officers are human beings. And we have seen the structures that they live in, I can't even call them houses, Mr. Speaker, because they are just structures. Mr. Speaker, police officers need the basics. They need a decent house over their heads. They need decent houses where they can have a conducive family environment, Mr. Speaker. And most of all, they also need a decent salary. Mr. Speaker, the police officers protect us, but who protects them and who protects their families, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, you have seen the structures that the police officers sleep in. I said I will not call them houses, Mr. Speaker. And in those structures, some of them even share the structures, 3 or 4 officers. And then, Mr. Speaker, for example, if one of them has a spouse, Mr. Speaker, that becomes a psychological torture for the rest of the officers. Over time, Mr. Speaker, it becomes very dangerous for the people who share the house or the structure with this other officer. Mr. Speaker, we need the police officers' incentives to be seriously considered, for them to be reviewed, Mr. Speaker, also to motivate them. We all know, those people who have done human resource, that if you motivate staff, they work even harder. If we motivate the police officers, Mr. Speaker, they are going to work harder for this country. They are going to stop kitu kidogo. They will even stop taking any small monies from the traffic offenders and even stop destroying criminal evidence, because sometimes they do that for money purposes. Some of the police officers even work with the criminal gangs. They will stop all these things if, Mr. Speaker, they are given the motivation to work for this country. Last, Mr. Speaker, we as a House, we need to be serious when it comes to issue of discussing motions or bills, so that once they're discussed, Mr. Speaker, can we follow them and ensure that they're implemented? We should stop being a house of, let's say in this Swahili, kusema na kusema. We need a house of kusema na kutenda. Can we ensure that we follow up these issues so that they are fully implemented for these police officers and any other motion that is tabled in this floor of the House to be implemented? Last, Mr. Speaker, the police officers of any country, and I'm speaking of Kenya here, they need to be independent. They need to be a police force that works for the people of the country, not for the current regime that is there to use it to kill and throw tear gas and many other things to the opposition. They need to work for the people so that the people can also be motivated, as we are doing right now, to fight for them. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. And as I've said, let us, as a House, ensure that what we have discussed here on this floor of the House is fully implemented. The police people need to be to live in decent houses and given good salaries so that we can motivate them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, shall we have Honorable Nyagan Kada, member for Tharaka Nithi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I've been waiting. Thank you. And before I support the motion, Mr. Speaker, I would like to support the sentiment of my colleagues that we need to implement the motions we have been passing in this House. Because I remember very well last term, Mr. Speaker, we had almost the same motion, which I don't know what really happened. So we should be implementing whatever we debate in this House. In supporting the motion, Mr. Speaker, we are saying, okay, my colleagues are earlier on saying that Kenya is different. I agree with that. But I want to say that a police officer in northern Kenya and a police officer in Nairobi is the same person. They need to be treated the same. They need to be remunerated the same. They need to have houses and not structures, Mr. Speaker, as Madam Florence has said. These people, they are really living in a pathetic situation. Some of them, you find a police officer standing on the road for 7 hours, whether it is raining, whether it is shining, whether it is what, he is there throughout, he has nowhere to sit, he has nothing to eat. When you see them when they are walking in the road, Mr. Speaker, even the dressing, the belts they have on their heads, it is weather beaten, if they are changed, you cannot know if it is black or white. The shirts they are putting on, they are supposed to be blue, but they have changed. Why can't we really look after these officers? These officers we are talking about, Mr. Speaker, is the junior police officers. They have nobody to look after them. They protect the 50 million Kenyans. Who is going to protect these officers, Mr. Speaker? It is the law we make in this House that is going to protect these officers. We need to remunerate them properly, because some of these officers, Mr. Speaker, they stagnate in one grade for more than 20 years without any promotions. What happens? Why really? Mr. Speaker, you might be surprised that those who worked in the last parliament, last elections, those who are attached to the high EBC, even to date, they have not been paid. And if they are paid, that money does not reach those junior officers. Where does that money go? And then we say that these officers, they are taking 200, 300 from anybody on the road. Why can't they take? Because we need to tell the senior officers, their bosses, they need to protect, they need to give them what is required of them. Mr. Speaker, we are talking of the junior police officers who are protecting us, who are supposed to protect our properties. And Mr. Speaker, we are talking of build our economy. We cannot build the Kenyan economy when our security is not properly taken care of. And this security is taken care of by the junior police officer, who is supposed to be taken care of properly, who is supposed to be housed by the Kenya government, who is supposed to have a decent bed, who is supposed to have school children going to better schools. Even if they are given the same salary I'm getting, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't mind. Let them get proper allowances wherever they are working. I really support, and I want to say thank you for this. Honorable Mheshimiwa who brought this motion, and I support. Thank you.
Shall we now have, as I said, I'll give chances. Should I give chances, please? It is good for you to understand, and I have to do quite a bit of considerations. Honorable Were Ogondo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity, and I wish to contribute in support of the motion. Like any other worker, one needs to be motivated. A police officer needs very good insurance cover for the safety. A police officer needs a very good salary and proper housing. Actually, in my constituency, I visited an AP camp, and I was surprised until it forced me to look for some funds, because families, 3 families, sharing one room. And we should even start from Parliament, which most of the members can see. Just go to the gate of the National Assembly. You see, even when it rains, members come in, and the police officers there could even be rained as they open the gate for us. When it is hot, they are exposed to a lot of heat. So I will urge the management of the National Assembly first to start by putting a shade so that our security are well covered. 2, we are the beneficiary of security, including the ones which we have. Even 22,000 allowance which the National Assembly pays for the allowance is even too little. Sometimes we are in reserve, they need to move to check their families in town. So an improvement should start from us. We have been seeing problems of frustration, and the government has not done very, very well. I saw during the time for demonstration, a police officer is removed from Lamu to come and contain demonstrators in Nyanza or in Nairobi, and they were sleeping in the vehicles, surely. They didn't even have clothes to change. That this person can turn against you. So we want a comprehensive program from the government in which the officers should be treated like any other employee. If we do that, we'll be assured of our safety. They are also parents, and we need to encourage them by putting very good houses, because they also need to produce other weres in future. And you cannot bring were if you are trying in a conducive environment. So I support the motion, and also I wish the police officers to behave. Today, we are in solidarity in supporting their welfare. When it comes to discharge of duty, we want them to serve Kenyans with a lot of dignity, with a lot of neutrality, so that we get quality performance, and we want them to be paid well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, I was informed that we have the mover. The mover has to be called to reply. Now, the mover, there is normally a very gracious occasion where the mover actually donates some of his minutes to colleagues in the next 10 minutes. And now, because of time, I'll call the mover to reply. If he's gracious enough, he can actually donate some of his few minutes to colleagues. Honorable Omar.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. We will start with Honorable Jeremiah. 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I will start by recognizing my colleague, Honorable Omar, for giving me the 2 minutes. Honorable Speaker, I come from a constituency where insecurity is quite high. Honorable Speaker, our policemen in Turkana County, and particularly in Loima, where I come from, are living in very inhumane conditions. Honorable Speaker, they are facing a lot of challenges, including the transport element. I don't think whether they even get trainings for the lower cadre, for them actually to even get the right methods of gathering intelligence from within the constituent and without. Honorable Speaker, I want to join my colleagues by asking this House to really reconsider this time round, giving the police the adequate housing. Because, Honorable Speaker, where I come from, I have started by putting the construction of police housing as a priority of our CDF in Loima constituency. So I feel even the CDF itself, because this is our function, the function of security, we should increase CDF, we put more money on security so that we help them build their houses and many other things. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to speak less because of time.
Honorable Omar, just to give you guidance, when you donate minutes, you give a very short time because you don't also have a lot of time.
We'll start with Pamela, Honorable Ombake, Honorable Rueda, Otiende, Sunkuya.
Honorable Omar, you have 5 minutes to yourself. So even if you are giving out, be sure.
Pamela, Rueda, Otiende, Wanyonyi, and Tandaza.
It looks like to me like a 1 minute donation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. And thank you, Honorable Omar, for giving me this opportunity. Indeed, I will be very short because I think much of what I intended to say has been said by my able colleagues, Mr. Speaker, sir. The only issue that I wanted to raise in that less than 1 minute is that, to be honest, the entire police force in this country are actually suffering. I come from Migori County, along the border of Kenya and Tanzania. We have very few police. There is no housing at all. There is nothing. So the level of crime has also been so sophisticated. And therefore, I think the salaries of these men and women need to be increased to attract capable minds who can actually counteract the nature of criminals that we are witnessing in Kenya today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Give her the mic.
Okay, asante kunipatia hii nafasi ambayo nimeitafuta Bwana Spika kwa muda mrefu. Mimi ningependa members wajue kwamba ukitetea constituency yako au county yako, yule askari pengine hata kesho, leo namtetea kwa county yako, yule askari kesho atakuwa Lamu. Huwezi mlipa sawa askari aliyoko Nairobi na askari aliyoko Lamu Boni Forest. Huwezi Bwana Spika ukamlipa sawa askari ambaye ako Gamba police station na askari ambaye ako hapa. Huwezi mlipa sawa askari ambao ako Kiangwi Bwana Spika na askari ambao uko hapa. Tusitetee kwamba hawa askari watabaki pale pale. Hawa askari kwa kawaida wanapewa transfer. Na itakuwa si sawa, itafika wakati askari wakatae kwenda kule. Kuna wengine wanakataa hata wako ready ku resign waache kazi kwa sababu ya kupelekwa sehemu kama Lamu. Lazima wapawe posho.
Thank you so much. First of all, let the policemen be respectable, disciplined, ethical, because we are passing this motion. But I urge my members here that what we should do now is use our CDF like I've done, like you can do, to build houses for them. And then pass this motion and ask CRC to review the salaries of our policemen. I think that's all we want to do. Use our CDF to do that, but then CRC to be able to review the salaries of our colleagues, our brothers, our sons in the police force. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I support this motion with a small rider. One, that may it apply nationally. The police are guided by the National Police Service Commission, so it's national. The hardship of the police, no, not the hardship areas only. Two, the National Police Service Commission has failed. That is why this motion has been brought. It is their duty to negotiate with the Salaries Commission, both the salaries in terms of hardship allowance and proper housing. So may this motion be forwarded to them so that they can properly undertake their duty and awaken from their slumber. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I want to say that what we are talking about, the police force and the weaknesses that we have there, we are dealing with the basic needs of the police. That is their human rights. They have a right to housing, a right to good, employment and salaries, food, clothing, education, and everything else. Because this is poor, not many people want to become policemen because the image is so wrong. There's a lot of violence within the police force itself because their policemen are killing themselves and their families.
On notice that they should be able to take what the Honorable Member for Otende has said, that they should take their work seriously and negotiate for the welfare of police officers in Kenya. Thank you so much, and I beg to move.
Order member, you are actually not moving. I think you had the chance to reply.
I beg to reply.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, we shall pay putting the question on that particular one to be put in subsequent time. I order that we get to the next order.
Order number 9, motion, designation and gazettement of areas and streets for demonstrations and picketing.
Honorable Simon Kingara, you have the floor. You have a maximum of 20 minutes. Not minimum, maximum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving the guide. I stand to move the following motion, Mr. Speaker, sir. Note that aware that Article 37 of the Constitution guarantees every person the right peaceably and unarmed to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petition to public authorities, noting that there is need to guarantee that the enjoyment of rights and fundamental freedoms by any individual should not prejudice the rights and fundamental freedom of others. Noting that demonstration and picketing in cities and major towns in Kenya, country, particularly in Mombasa, Nairobi, and Kisumu, have on many occasions resulted in destruction, loss of life and property, public disorder, and creation of an unfavorable business environment. Noting that the right and freedom are not unconditional because the government has a duty and a responsibility to ensure maintenance of peace and public order and protection of the right, life, and property of all its citizens. This House resolves that the government should designate and gazette specific areas and streets for demonstration and picketing with a view to ensuring that individuals enjoy their rights, freedoms, and enshrined in the Constitution without infringing on the freedoms and rights of others. Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you very much for this opportunity to expose what happens when we are demonstrating and picketing out there. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to put notice to this House that between January, year 2017, Mr. Speaker, sir, up to November, this country demonstration alone, 175 times, Mr. Speaker, sir. If you quantify, you find that actually half of last year, year 2017, we were busy there either demonstrating, picketing, or doing all sort of manner, Mr. Speaker, sir. What is the issue about this, Mr. Speaker, sir? The demonstrations here in Kenya are characterized in the following, Mr. Speaker, sir. Violent, it is known. When the violence is there, the people are armed with guns, good weapons, sirens, you know, it is very popular here. Looting, mugging is everywhere, Mr. Speaker, sir. Destructive of property, it's done. Even life have been lost, Mr. Speaker, sir. One of our member of parliament was injured here in the morning. It happened within an area where demonstration was taking place in an orderly manner, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, what is the effect of our country when we are demonstrating and picketing? International airport or something of that nature. People can't go to work, Mr. Speaker, sir. Schools can't operate. Teachers are at home, Mr. Speaker, sir. Sick people can't go to hospital, Mr. Speaker, sir, as one is trying to fight for his or her right. Does this one who fails to attend his or her normal duties lack in light, Mr. Speaker, sir? That is the question. And I think it's a high time, Mr. Speaker, sir. We sober up, like what happened just the other day. Our readers portrayed maturity when they greeted one another and created order in this country. What is the responsibility of this House, Mr. Speaker, sir? It is to come up with rules and regulations, Mr. Speaker, sir, which should adhere to what our readers are portraying, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because if it is left out there, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think we will run astray. Mr. Speaker, sir, the economy of this country lies on tourism, Mr. Speaker, sir. When we block our airport once again, Mr. Speaker, sir, visitors can't come, Mr. Speaker, sir. Our hotels, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have noticed hotels recording zero admission, Mr. Speaker, sir. A good example, Wildlife Park in Laikipia, Mr. Speaker, sir, it has recorded zero admission in many occasions because somebody else is trying to fight for his or her right and losing a lot of money for this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. Impara Park in Kisumu, it was almost closed, Mr. Speaker, sir, just for somebody fighting for his or her right. Why shouldn't we be orderly when we are doing this and the law allows, Mr. Speaker, sir? Mr. Speaker, sir, people have lost life, Mr. Speaker, sir. And you know Article 27 of this Constitution, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow everybody right to life. Why should an innocent individual, Mr. Speaker, sir, lose his or her life because I want my right, Mr. Speaker? I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's not fair. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we are out there running up and down, there is too much distraction, Mr. Speaker, sir. We come to this house, Mr. Speaker, sir, fight for budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the development, especially for our road, Mr. Speaker, sir. But when we are demonstrating, we start burning our tarmac, Mr. Speaker, very expensive, Mr. Speaker, sir. We lose those roads, Mr. Speaker, sir, uprooting our railway lines, Mr. Speaker, sir, and billions of taxpayers is spent on the same, Mr. Speaker, sir. I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is not fair for our own self, Mr. Speaker. Street rights, we are complaining. We have just finished security matter here, Mr. Speaker, sir. This officer wants to work when there is his right. Somebody comes and vandalizes the same right as he or she trying to look for his right. Are we doing fair to our own self, Mr. Speaker, sir? I think we are not. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we broke the airport, for instance, or the port, Mr. Speaker, sir, these are also being used by foreigners, Mr. Speaker, sir. And may I come a bit home? Somebody is going abroad with a foreign plane. I will not mention any. You have paid your ticket, a lot of money. You are going to America or elsewhere, Mr. Speaker, sir. 400,000, maybe you are two, a wife and a man. Then you get me broken road because of my right. You miss the flight. You have paid that country that money, and you have to pay again, Mr. Speaker. That plane has left, and you want to go. You have to pay. You have robbed your own self and your country because of you trying to fight a simple right, which you would have done in a maybe another manner, Mr. Speaker, sir. I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, it has reached a time when we should have order when we are doing or working within our own self, Mr. Speaker. Report 2017, CMA, it's well known what happened. If you quantify, add these together, it is totaling to 900 billion Kenya shillings was lost during that time, Mr. Speaker, sir. A single year, we lost 900 billion. And yet here, we are trying to look for 200 billion out there when we lost almost a trillion. Are we not shooting our own foot? I leave the answer to this honorable house. I think it is no. And again, has anybody else tried to do business otherwise? The answer becomes yes. What happened, Mr. Speaker, sir? We pick one, for instance, Mr. Speaker, sir. United Kingdom, our good emulator, Mr. Speaker, sir. When they found they are not benefiting, when they are running up and down haphazardly, Mr. Speaker, sir, they came up with a law or a regulation or whatever it was in year 2005, Mr. Speaker, sir, and they agreed one cannot demonstrate, picket around Parliament, down street, parades of Westminster, Mr. Speaker, sir, and any other area which could hinder the well-being and development of that country, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is in record. You can Google, you can do whatever, go and get it. Are they doing better than us? The answer again, Mr. Speaker, sir, 100% yes. I heard the other day that even if you say 1,000 times, I'm sorry, or what 1,000 times, it remains one. So it is 1,000 times, but I know it is one, and they are benefiting, Mr. Speaker, sir. Maybe one would say, was it only that? Another quote, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you are around me, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I quote an individual, Mr. Speaker, the CEO, Mr. Tan Kin Lian of Singapore, Mr. Speaker, sir, when that country refused to respect The private sector, Mr. Speaker, sir. These people went to the Speaker's corner, Mr. Speaker, sir, and picketed there for days, Mr. Speaker, sir. And that was just the other day, Mr. Speaker, sir, year 2008. They picketed until their cry was adhered to, and the soberness came, and they found the economy moving on. What is the economy of Singapore? I leave that answer to honorable members. Sweden, Mr. Speaker, sir, is another one. In Sweden, you know they have put laws and regulations of when to do what, and one of it, Mr. Speaker, sir, is designated areas for picketing and demonstration, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it's a high time we get order and do things soberly, Mr. Speaker, sir, with this spirit of togetherness. Spain, Mr. Speaker, sir, another one with a good, which is also a very good role model. And Italy, the list, Mr. Speaker, continues. Maybe one would say, is it happening in Africa? Yes, the answer again, Mr. Speaker, sir, is yes. And what do we do, Mr. Speaker, sir? We go to Uganda. What is happening in Uganda, our neighbor here? A small country, Mr. Speaker, sir. In Uganda, Mr. Speaker, sir, you find that there are areas, Mr. Speaker, sir, where you cannot demonstrate or picket, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I pick one or two, Mr. Speaker, sir? If you allow, may I do so? Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. Go to the Parliament of Entebbe, Mr. Speaker, sir. You can't demonstrate there. You can't picket there. They have left that for the entire country to operate normally, Mr. Speaker, sir. What are they doing to their international airport, Mr. Speaker, sir? You can't go to block the road heading to the Entebbe airport, Mr. Speaker, sir. You can't picket there. You allow the country to move, Mr. Speaker, sir, or as you also move your own way, Mr. Speaker, sir. The High Court of Uganda, Mr. Speaker, sir, all the state roads, Mr. Speaker, sir, where have they lost because of being ordered, Mr. Speaker, sir? I think they have not lost. If anything, Mr. Speaker, sir, they have gained a lot, if not more. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think what I have talked, Mr. Speaker, sir, does not infringe, Mr. Speaker, sir, Article the 24 of the Constitution, especially D and E, Mr. Speaker, sir. If you refer to that, Mr. Speaker, sir, it allows, Mr. Speaker, sir, a room for other individuals, Mr. Speaker, sir, right to be protected, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a high time we go back and sober up and think how we can protect our economy, how we can protect our country.
Unconditional, because the government has a duty and responsibility to ensure maintenance of peace and public order and protection of the rights, life, and property of all citizens. This House resolves that the government should designate and gazette specific areas and streets for demonstrations and picketing with a view to ensuring that individuals enjoy their rights and freedoms as enshrined in the Constitution without infringing on the freedoms and rights of others. Honorable members, the time being 2 minutes after 1 p.m., this House starts adjourned till today, Wednesday, 21st March 2018 at 2:30 p.m.